In the beginning, when you start working with technology, a lot of teachers, they think, oh, I don't want to use it. The resistance is a big part of using technologies. After that, when they realize that, wow, I'm saving a lot of time. I'm having the time now to get some coffee with my colleagues. That they realize that technology can facilitate their teaching experience. This is really, really good.
I'm Charlie, and you're listening to another episode of the Inside Japan podcast. Recently, I spoke with Pablo Riveros, the CEO, director, and founder of Tsunagaru Edutech, and we talked about the state of education technology in Japan, how you can help teachers to use that technology, and whether AI is coming for teachers' jobs. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and if you do, please share it with a friend. Pablo, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation because EdTech is a really booming industry in Japan. And I want to know how you got into EdTech and how you started Tsunagaru Edutech in Fukuoka.
Yes, well, it all started when I was living in Australia. I was working at the University of Queensland, as a digital learning designer. And back in 2019, before the corona started, I was invited to Kyushu University with some of other colleagues from the University of Queensland to do a seminar about online education, blended learning education. So I was doing this kind of webinar seminar. And after that webinar, some teachers from the university came to me and they asked me, wow, you have experience in these things. We would like to know more about that, the online education and so on. After that, I did some senior consulting for people from at the University of Kyushu University. We did some project with them. And then I thought, well, this is an opportunity maybe to start my own business in Japan. And I started with the consulting, and then I registered my own company focusing DX and e-learning solutions and technologies.
How hard was it to start, or easy was it to start a company in Fukuoka? Because I know a lot of people, think starting a business in Japan is difficult, but it sounds like, from what I've heard about Fukuoka, is that they really want to support startups there.
Yes, that's right. I think Fukuoka has established this startups cafe or for international startup for more than 10 years. So they have a pretty solid support, and it's bilingual support. And that is so attractive for there are so many international startups based in Fukuoka. And the beauty of also about open your startups in Fukuoka, because the cost associated to register your business, renting, cost of living, it's way more cheaper than living in Tokyo, right? So that's just the good things. And also, as I said to you, they have Fukuoka City have Fukuoka Growth next, and engineering cafe and different startup cafe and so on. They're startup cafe that they have different government private support, and it's really, really good, actually, really good.
So tell me about the situation of EdTech in Japan, because, I'm sure a lot of teachers in our audience, when things went online during COVID, it was this very big scramble to try and figure out how can we actually teach these kids online. And I remember at the school that I was at, a lot of teachers didn't know how to use computers very well. They weren't very good at that. And it was really difficult for them to even just do Zoom lessons, So what is the state of EdTech in Japan?
First, Japan is pretty advanced in online and technologies, but on the other hand, it's pretty traditional in the way of teaching students, like kind of face-to-face learning. It was very common before the pandemic. But during the pandemic, things changed, and the Japanese government launched a website about provide learning solutions for different schools across Japan. And additionally to that, so many local government are supporting local schools with the tablets or iPad into the classroom. Before of that, it was really hard to imagine that Japan will face this learning or new style of pedagogy. But now we can see more school in Japan, across Japan, and not only in school, also in universities in Japan are using more technologies. The thing is that comparing Japan with other countries, there's still Japan it's behind in my own experience working in Australia, Australia has more than 40 years of experience in learning technologies and education. Even the lectures you are all recorded. You go to the lecture, you present to 100 students, you finish, you lecture, and everything is recorded in your learning management system, so the student can easily access and study everywhere. And that's the beauty of online education, the flexibility that you can get, and also you provide this kind of flexibility to your students too.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing because I think a lot of teachers are a little worried about having to update their style of teaching to, you know, the modern technology, because the technology is moving really, really fast. So what do you do to help, or do you do any work to help teachers to learn these new things like learning management softwares and how to use edtech in their own classrooms? Because, you know, maybe a lot of them are a little bit apprehensive about it.
I think it's some universities, they have a very big budget for that. Like I know they have a learning technologies support, edtech support, but on the other hand, there's some schools or universities that don't have a huge budget to do that. So I came from like us, like our startup, that we can help them to provide basically we start from the simple problem. We identify the problem and how we can help to implement learning technologies and also the training. The most important part of learning technologies is you can give an iPad to the teachers, but maybe they don't know how to use the iPad. And that is the problem. We need to work with them and talk to them and explain how technologies is so important for your teaching experience, but also for the learning outcomes. That's very, very important.
Yeah, because how do the technologies actually help the teachers? Because I think a lot of teachers wouldn't know what to do with it, but also they might not see the benefit of it. They might think, actually, the most important thing is the relationship between the teacher and the student, and maybe this technology is just getting in the way. So what are the actual benefits of using technology in the classroom?
Just one example. One of the projects that we did before, it was like, a professor asked, I want to integrate my classroom, my face-to-face lectures with engage with the student. It was a large cohort of students that they couldn't participate in the face-to-face classroom, and the teacher tried to implement different experience and fun lectures, but the student actually didn't participate. And then we tried to work with them to implement like a pooling system using the smartphones. At that time, that university was really, it was not able to use your smartphone sometimes into the lectures, but we did a pilot, and it was the pooling system that the teachers can ask questions and the student immediately can respond. And it was really, really positive experience, because imagine when you have a lecture and some students are very shy. In some cases, it happened in Japan, right? So if students there don't want to participate in this kind of face-to-face interactions, but if you have a smartphone and a student can respond very quickly and click yes, no, I agree, no, I agree, this is really, really positive for you experience. And this is something that also teachers should understand, that technology, they don't replace them. It's part of it's kind of part of the integration of you, part of your body now. If you think about smartphone or iPad, people use every day your smartphone. So it's part of your extend your body using these technologies now.
Yeah, so what kind of metrics are you actually using then to understand how that is affecting the class? Because it might seem like it's a fun thing, you know, like, okay, all the students can then like click on a poll, but does it have an effect on their grades? Does it have effect on their sort of confidence in the classroom? Like what metrics are you using to see whether it's working or not?
Yes, I think the most important when you try to implement learning technologies into the classroom and edtech into your classroom, you have to create a proper structure, a program for that, a testing and prototyping first. We started with prototyping, proof of concept, identify the technology that you want to use it, work with experts, how they can help you to identify the best tool, identify your problem, what do you exactly want to do and want to resolve. And so in some cases, maybe technology, you don't need the technologies. That's the reality. But in many cases now, you can implement a new technology and an iPad, an app, whatever, and then after that, you can identify using learning analytics. And the learning analytics, it's basically you can collect information from learning experience through any learning management system, app, and so on. And that is how you can measure, and actually you can improve your teaching experience too. If you measure, you can identify little changes, and then you can improve that to the next lecture, and so on and so on.
Yeah, because I think some teachers have experience with things like Google Classroom or maybe Microsoft Teams and things like that. And I think some of those things do help teachers, and they do help students to have maybe just break down some of the barriers between communication. So instead of students having to give teachers like a paper that's like handwritten or something, they can give it to them on a computer. You can feedback very quickly. You don't have to be at the school or wherever you're doing your learning. You can do it all online, and it makes that a little bit faster. There's a little bit less friction. But I wonder if this is also a case of maybe tech people thinking like, oh, more tech in school is better, and not really necessarily thinking about like, to what extent should tech be in the classroom at all? There's a lot of talk in the United States and the UK about no tech schools, where they're trying to get kids back to learning, without having teachers using iPads as like just a way to like make their classroom
Yes.
a little bit more fun.
Yeah, back in 2018, Japan, in the case of Japan, in the integration of technologies into the classroom, Japan was between Mexico and Colombia in the list of the 2018 implementation. That things changed through the pandemic, and more universities and more schools are using technologies. The thing is, using technologies that you need to work with experts into the classroom, because there's a lot of privacy. There are a lot of things that you have to be careful when you use learning technologies too. You don't want to expose your students to a lot of information or privacy or private content. So that's something that you need to be careful when you use learning technologies. But at the same time, in the beginning, when you start working with technology, a lot of teachers, they think, oh, I don't want to use it. The resistance is a big part of using technologies. After that, when they realize that, wow, I'm saving a lot of time. I'm having the time now to get some coffee with my colleagues. That they realize that technology can facilitate their teaching experience. This is really, really good. But also it's important to identify the best technology that it's according to you, class, you lecture, lesson, but also you have to be very careful with the concern about privacy, and what kind of technology you can, or what kind of data you can use, and how you will use these data.
Yeah, and I think Japanese people are very sensitive about privacy issues as well, much
Correct.
more so than I think people in other countries. I think Japan took a long time to start doing online payments because they were worried about, online, like, I don't know where my information's going. But I wonder, those metrics that you're talking about, like the kinds of the things that teachers can get from learning management softwares and edtech, how do they actually use that to improve their teaching in the classroom?
First, you have to understand what kind of data you can use, and what kind of information is value for your teaching experience. So you can, for example, a Google Classroom, you can collect a lot of information through using the Google Classroom, and it can help you with the different click, for example, how many clicks the student spend in responding to quizzes. You can get information about that, or how long the length of the student spend watching a video. Also, is really, really important to identify if you want to create a really good content, multimedia content or not. You can identify also through learning analytics. But at the same time, it's very, very important to understand first metrics. You have to make a matrix of how you can identify, okay, I want to measure the student experience to this tool. I want to identify the learning analytics behind of that. And after, when you identify this kind of common learning practice, then you can see if this data is useful. And then when you have the data, you have to understand, okay, now is the time to improve my teaching experience. And then you use the data to improve your experience to the next lecture. This is how, in my own experience, when I work at different universities, and we try to identify the best tools to collect the data, and then provide kind of report and thinking report for using experience.
Are there ways that things like AI can come into this to help sort of take that information, that data and the metrics, and kind of give teachers an ability to understand that? Because, you know, that requires some kind of data science understanding. You know, maybe older teachers especially won't be able to do that. They might not be able to catch up with that, and they might not want to do that. But are there ways that maybe AI can help with, you know, taking metrics and going, okay, maybe you should do this in your classroom to help prevent this, or maybe, like, you know, 47% of your students are not watching the lecture videos that you upload, so, you know, you should make your videos shorter, or you should, you know, are there ways to do that without having so much sort of like personal responsibility from the teachers to dig into the metrics and dig into the data to understand it, which is very difficult?
Yeah, you're right. I think when you start working with data, you really need expert in that field that they can help you to identify in an easy way and simple visual way how you can use this data in the proper way. Yes, in terms of, for example, when you use learning analytics or you want to create, improve the teaching experience, the AI, it's a really good part of your help, came to your help. There's a lot of AI or chatbots that can be integrated into the classroom, kind of virtual assistants. And there's many cases actually in United States. A couple of years ago, a professor used an AI into the classroom and interact. It was a teaching assistant, virtual teaching assistant, and the student thought that it was they're communicating with the teacher, but no, it was not. It was AI, and the AI, as you can imagine, AI use simple algorithm that you connect and improve every time. When you get more data, you get better and better. And it was really interesting because the student after that, after maybe 2 months, they realized they were never talk with the teacher. They were talking with the AI. A similar case we apply in Australia. We did a case when we have a big bunch of students and database that we have to create. We have to develop an AI tool when the teachers was facing a lot of difficulties to get so many emails when the student complained about a system that was not working properly. So we used an Amazon Lex. It was a simple tool to create a chatbot, and the chatbot allow us to help facilitate the experience. So the student, before they send an email, thousands of email to the teacher, and then when the AI, they connect with AI, the AI give the response. They have a certain already predetermined answers, and then when they get the answers, they give some of the quickly respond. So before, the teacher during the weekend, he has to spend so many time responding more than 100 emails during the weekend. Using the chatbot is just all reduced for maybe 10, 20 emails. And this is how you can see the AI or chatbot can assist teachers.
Yeah, and that's a really clear way that teachers can feel and understand that, oh, actually, all of a sudden I have all this free time because I'm not like answering the same questions from, 20 different students asking me the same thing. A chatbot just deals with all of them. And so I can have my weekends back, because that is one of the problems with being a teacher. Correct. Is that it's unlike any other job where there's a lot of unpaid overtime that you just kind of do as a teacher to help your students. Like if you care about your students and you want to help them, and the AI is kind of like, in a way, helping to reduce the burden on you to respond to those kinds of things.
Yes, that's right. Probably help you and facilitate your teaching experience, but also having this kind of chatbot that help you to respond and communicate with your students, and they can easily filter and give you a specific question what they're really looking for. Because you have a student, you might have 100 students, let's send you different type of question, but if you already have this response and the chat will just give the response that you have already prepared, that's incredible. Actually, it helped you a lot.
Yes, this is very, very, very useful. I wonder, to what extent do you think that artificial intelligence or edtech solutions might replace the job of a teacher? So I don't think that there's very much chance that people will just learn from AIs. I don't think that we're going to just stop having teachers at all. But there are ways, I think, if you think of for example, in language education, a lot of people might have usually gone to a language class if they were just starting to learn Japanese. But now with things like Duolingo and a lot of apps that people use, like those apps in a way are replacing a teacher's job, because instead of going to a class, people are just downloading an app on their phone for the first few months, and then they get a teacher later on when they have like a foundation in the language. So to what extent do you think things like artificial intelligence and apps and edtech are replacing teachers?
I don't think AI technology will replace teachers. However, teachers have to be prepared and face very huge new innovation and technologies into the classroom, and they have to be prepared for that. If you are not prepared and you don't get the proper skills, I think you will be replaced.
So what can they
I
do to prepare for that? Because it's a
that's
difficult
that's
thing.
that the yeah just the big companies, Google or many others, Amazon, they're offering many courses and training for free to upskilling cloud technologies, basic using of user experience, what is UX, UI, simple chatbots technology, so on. There's so many MOOCs, massive open online courses that you can upskill your teaching skills. And thing is, because technology is there, and that's predictive learning, that AI, it's a very accurate. Using predictive, the AI can help you to know exactly what you're studying and what it's going to be, how you're going to be your progress in the next semester. They can predict so well that humans, they cannot do that. And that's something that teachers need to be prepared for that. So how they need to know exactly, they need to know how to use these technologies, or less how to apply these technologies into their curriculum, because we are facing a new advance of technologies, not only in education, but in any field, e-health, smart cities, and so on. So it's all connected with the Internet of Things. So if you think about, you have an Internet of Things and a smart classroom, when you enter, the lights turn on, out they activate your digital class board, and you have all your students connecting the hybrid space, face to face, but also you can have online at the same time. This is going to be the future. The future of classroom is going to be hybrid learning. And you have
Absolutely. And people
teachers.
need to adjust to that, because
Correct.
I think if you don't, I don't think you're helping your students. I think you're actually letting your students down if you think, oh, actually, no, I just want to do it the way I've always done it. I just want to stay in my safe, bubble of, I'm just going to teach it this way. I'm going to do a lecture, and then the kids just going to write their papers, and I will spend all weekend marking them. You're slowing things down for your students. You're reducing the amount of learning that they can achieve. And when other schools will be doing that, like especially competitive schools, I've worked at international schools and private schools a lot, and they embrace this new stuff, and then
Correct.
they test it out and see if it's going to work very quickly, because they're like, we want to do the best for our students. And if you're not trying to do that at all, I think you're letting your students down in some way. What advice do you give to schools if they're sort of like trying to dip their toe in this a little bit? They're not really sure if they like what they want to do, how to use, there's lots of different technologies available. How do you advise schools when they're just starting to get interested and committed to doing ed tech in the classroom?
Yeah, I think that's something that I can, in my own experience, some teachers, they think they have the experience to implement technology into the classroom. Yes, it's easy, I just want to do this, but they're not expert in that field. And that's something that they have to understand, that they are expert in the world. They can help them. First, you need to identify, like I mentioned before, which is the best technology into my classroom, and ask for funding, support, because the tech implementation, edtech, is very expensive, but it could have a really huge impact into your lectures. I'm not sure how it's in Japan at the moment, but in other countries, like in Australia, they facilitate or they give you awards for the best teacher or the best the most innovative teacher, and it's all connected with the technology that they use in the classroom, pulling smart systems, learning management system, analytics, and so on and so on. So the most important is to identify your good partners, company outsourcing partners that they can help you with that. Identify what exactly you want to do. Go and accept that you will get a very feedback how to improve that, but you are the person in the end that you will have to apply these changes. And the most important also is the time commitment to implement technologies.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting that you say that Australia, they have like, best teacher awards and stuff. And I don't know if they have anything like that kind of thing in Japan, but in my experience, I've had schools where I've never even been observed teaching. I've worked at schools for years and no one's ever seen, they base it on whether the kids get good results in their exams. And if they don't get good results in their exams, then they go, okay, maybe something's wrong with this teacher. But they never think like, how do I build this teacher up? How do I help them improve? How do I help them do the best for their students? And I feel like that kind of almost competitiveness between teachers would be a really helpful thing. But I don't know if that's something that Japan takes very seriously.
Yeah, I think it's more than competitive. It's just to award your team or teachers that they have make a big changes in their education, in their own classes. I think it's very important to award those people, and at the same time, more than that, it's like, I know, when you make changes, some people around you will see these changes, and then you can start implementing little by little. And that is how you can see massive tech implementation into the classroom, is when start with one teacher. Oh, I want to change things. We can't do this anymore. We have to move very quick, because like you said, there's so many competitors now. If the parents, they want to send the kids to school, you don't want to send to the very old traditional school that they don't know how to use even computers in the classroom. However, when you see like, I know, when you see that into the teachers, that they can have more proper technologies, you have a really good support. It's very, very different things.
So how would I, as an individual teacher, if I was teaching in a school, maybe especially like an old traditional Japanese school, how would I sort of get, what advice would you give me to start using EdTech in the classroom and start maybe integrating it into my curriculum?
I think first, it's I guess you have a principal and the head of their teaching, I guess, maybe the curriculum program. You start with the curriculum. You need to connect with the people who are responsible to build the curriculum, because you have to start thinking about, you have to rebuild the curriculum based on EdTech. So what kind of technology in math can we find an app that can help us to facilitate the math classes? So that's when you start building the curriculum, the program. It's all started with the people who develop the entire program per semester. And after that, you identify, okay, this is which technology can I use? Do we have the funding for that? And then you need to start a conversation with the head of the school to see, well, we need to change these things. And after that, you can connect with companies like, I know, in Japan or like us, you can connect with them and try to help, to ask for help.
What if people are interested in connecting with the EdTech community in Japan? So for me, for example, I'm interested in doing this kind of thing, and I would be interested maybe in doing this kind of work. So what could I do if I wanted to like gain some skills, learn more about how this works, not only in Japan, but just as a sort of career goal?
Yeah, well, we just started launch a few weeks ago, JapanEdTech.org. That it's a community focusing EdTech companies, but also individuals that they want to be part of this community. And basically what we are looking is we aiming to be the first EdTech community in Japan, and help business, but also individuals to get some skills and connect networking with others, companies, corporate sector, and so on, that they can, for example, learn more about what is the new trends and what is coming actually in EdTech. And lucky that we already got some potential members from Australia, having a meeting from Spain, Barcelona. There are a huge edtech communities around the world. Just to give you an example, in Australia there are plus 600 edtech companies, and in Europe it's plus 2,000
Wow.
communities of edtech. Latin America plus 100 companies, and in Japan there's a few, but it's growing, and edtech is going to be a huge market.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Pablo, so much for coming on the podcast to talk about this kind of stuff. And I hope people will start to take edtech more seriously, especially in Japan. You know, there's a lot of traditional schools that they need to start using it. So if people are interested in finding out more about what you do and about your company, where can they find out that information?
Yes, thank you. They can visit actually our website, and we have a very simple website, and then go to our case studies, and they can see every case study that we have done. We have worked with universities, schools, and also DX implementation. So you can just visit our website, TsunagaruEdutech.com, and then they will find more information. And if you need to help, just contact us. We will happy to help you.
If you enjoyed that episode and you like what we're doing with Inside Japan, please consider going to iTunes and giving us a 5-star rating and sharing this episode with a friend who you think it might be useful for. As always, a huge thank you to JobsinJapan.com for sponsoring this podcast, and if you're looking for our other episodes, you can find them there, and keep us in mind next time you're looking for work in Japan. Thanks so much for listening, and see you again soon.